We are getting close to finished putting up these wood plank walls in this shipping container tiny house. I'm happy with the way it's turning out, except we have these goofy situations in the corners, which is because I'm using 8-foot boards to try to cover 20-foot walls. One of the most common questions I got in the comments of the previous video was, why didn't you just stagger the boards like normal people would do, which is standard procedure when doing anything like putting up wood plank walls? Well, I didn't do that because I guess that would have solved the whole problem with the corners, because if you use staggered boards, it doesn't matter what length the boards are because they'll cover the whole wall no matter what. Well, the reason I didn't do that is because instead of dwelling on the past, how about we just get to work, see what we can do to fill in those corners. The top and bottom part of the steel frame and the screws stick out farther than the studs do. So I cut the board short to clear that top and bottom so it doesn't stick out farther than the other boards, which leaves me nothing else to attach the other edge of the board to, which leaves the other edge of that board just flopping in the wind. And the spray foam is in the way to mount anything behind them to attach them to. But if I can mount this spacer to the far stud, that might solve the problem. After I deal with this sliver. If only we could use trim to solve all of the world's problems. Before I put the top piece of trim in, I need to do the same thing to the ceiling. But Houston, we have a problem. When they put the spray foam in, the pressure from the expansion bent most of these corner 2x4s. Every corner 2x4 is bowed too much to mount anything to without causing problems. Except for the corner we started on. That one was straight. On these bowed 2x4s, instead of putting a spacer the whole length of the board, I'm only putting these short ones at both ends so we can span the bowed middle. Now, if I would have listened to my viewers and staggered the boards, I probably wouldn't even have to be doing these janky patch jobs at the ends. But no reason to dwell on the past. Instead, we'll just do janky patch jobs to make up for the past. I'm trying to be careful with the drill not to snap the heads off these drywall screws. The previous video explains why I'm using drywall screws instead of real wood screws like normal people would use. What I did up here is kind of clunky, but I made a box around the bowed 2x4 that's under here. Same thing in the corner of the wall. This creates an open box behind here for that crooked 2x4 back there. Since those 2x4s in there are bonded by and partly surrounded by spray foam, I think it's just easier to box around them than it's going to be to try to replace or fix them. I had to put the straight stuff around the crooked stuff instead of on the crooked stuff because the crooked stuff is crooked and the straight stuff is straight. Crooked boards and straight boards don't always fit together well. Although if I would have staggered the boards like a normal person, brought them all the way out here, actually if I did that, we would have ran into a problem with that crooked board. If I would have brought the boards in the ceiling and this wall out past this stud, they would just be flopping in the wind back here with nothing straight to attach them to back here. It would be a case of either attach them to a crooked thing back here, which wouldn't work well, or cut them short and have them flopping in the wind. Instead of cutting them short and have them flopping in the wind, I just decided to start back here where the solid stud is. I have them attached to this stud, but I don't have them attached to this stud yet. I have another idea for that later. All the real carpenters out there probably know a much better way of doing this, but I'm not a real carpenter. I'm just making this up as I go along. Now that this is done, let's go do the other side. Since some of you aren't here to show me a better way to do this, I'm just going to do it the same way. Looks like it's playtime outside. This straight-edged board shows us how much bow is in that 2x4 in the ceiling. Only need a short piece of trim to fill in the end. I just happen to have this board that mysteriously broke somehow just a few days ago. We'll put it to good use. The board on the left is thinner than the other boards. If I have any left over, I might replace that one so these joints will come out even. This time I outsmarted myself. I decided to do this when the stove wasn't hot. I got all of that finished, got all those nasty bowed 2x4s covered up. It is now the next day, it's tomorrow now. All I really have to do now is put some trim around these doors. Same on the other end. I could put that up, which would make it look a lot nicer, Or I could leave that unfinished. That way I can always have the ability to say, yeah, this is not quite finished. It'll look better when it's finished. If I finish it, I don't have that excuse anymore. I'm sure I'll do it. I don't like leaving things unfinished. I might also be procrastinating because for the thin strips I'm going to need for that, I might be faced with having to use the most hateful, horrible power tool ever invented. I'm not looking forward to that. Since I cleaned all my mess up in here yesterday, now the echo in here is even worse. Now I need to put some functional things in here to make this a functional space and to tone down the echo and to decide what to do, if anything, for these seams. My original thought is I'd have a board here to cover that whole seam up. Then I'd have a piece of 1x6 to match the 1x6 above, all the way down to match the 1x6 below to cover up this seam. My thought was, instead of having a bunch of butt joints everywhere throughout the wall with 2 screws on each side of each butt joint, I would cover this up and that up. This would all be the same level all the way around it. This would just be like an inlaid wall with no seams in it. But this seam doesn't look too bad. It might look bad, but I don't know if it looks too bad. What looks better, having a piece of trim here covering that seam or having the seam there? Might look better with that covered up. All the way down to the bottom, of course. But I don't have the self-drilling screws for those steel studs behind there long enough for that. So I don't have to worry about that today. But I don't spend a whole lot of my time staring at walls anyway. So either way, it's probably going to be okay. But maybe I'm just weird that way. Another common question in that last video was, what about moisture buildup between these boards and the wall? That's what the spray foam is supposed to cure. The closed cell spray foam does not allow moisture to get to the metal container where it's cold. It should be on the warm side where it's not as likely to condense water. At least that's what all the experts say. Here we have a hot, dry climate in the summer. In places where it's humid in the summer, maybe you have more moisture there. Here I wouldn't worry about moisture at all in the summer. In the winter, we have mild winters. It doesn't get that cold. Got wood heat. These gaps in the boards would allow airflow for ventilation. I think the hot wood stove air would solve that problem. But this is an experiment. We'll see how it goes. One of the reasons I went with this kind of wall, or at least this kind of installation, all I have to do is unscrew these screws, pull a board out. If there's a problem back there, I'll be able to see it. If this was tongue and groove, if it was staggered, I guess if it was staggered, it could still do that. But that's one of the reasons I built this way. I could also remove boards, make modifications back there to wiring. Maybe after using this next winter, I can pop a board off, see what's going on back there. If I see any moisture problems, then we will figure something out. Another common question I've had on this build, did I insulate the floor? I have not insulated the floor yet. I do want to insulate the floor, but I have plans for the floor. I just haven't figured out what those plans are. It may involve radiant floor heating. That's one of the reasons I left this gap underneath with trim that can be adjusted. After I figure out what I'm going to do to the floor, I'll insulate the floor. It seems like there was another common question, but I don't remember what it was. I'll put a link to the playlist for this build up here somewhere, and the video before this. Maybe those videos will answer some questions. I think I'm done.